Ugh, ugh. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And you already read the title of the video. Today we are going to be taking a look at the gear that I personally use as a guitar player who's been doing it for the better part of 20 years. The reason I felt it important to make this video is because there's a lot of smaller topics along the way that I can address that I feel are interesting to talk about. And again, guitar playing is something that is very near and dear to my heart. I play a lot of other instruments, but guitar playing is my touchstone. That's where it all started for me musically, and it's the one that I have the most experience doing and the most experience with. Now, as a guitar player, one of the most important and pivotal pieces of gear that you are going to have as a part of your toolkit, not only when you're developing your skills, but also long after your skills have taken shape and you're honing them over time in any environment, we are talking about the practice amp. Okay, this is an important piece of equipment. Regardless of how many JCM stacks you have taking up space in your garage or tube amps or what have you, this and that, right? 90% of the time that is the most meaningful for you in your guitar playing career is going to happen in isolation, in a bedroom, in a studio, in a classroom, where you are locked in, practicing your instrument and developing your skills. Without further ado, after many years of seeking out that piece of equipment for myself, right, the proper practice amp for the job, I have arrived at the Positive Grid Spark Mini. I don't think this is the Spark 2. I think this is just the regular Spark, right? But this practice amp right here decimates all. This is the best practice amp that I have ever had by a significant margin. One thing that this amp has going for it above every other amp I've used in a practicing capacity is the mobility of this amp. At the price point of, I think when I got it, it was 250 bucks. With a discount, it was like 230, right? For $230, I have an amp that is sustainable at pretty much any volume I would need, again, right, in a practicing capacity, in my bedroom, in my bag, taking it to a gig, in my backpack while I'm riding my bike, getting to another location where I'm going to be playing guitar and need an amp, right? So, and there's a million different reasons why. You can even see, I don't know if it'll zoom in because this is an actual camera. It's not just going to autofocus. But there's a lot of damage because this thing has even been dropped. I had it using it as a speaker on a bicycle. Dropped the speaker, or at least this little cover here. Thing's durable. It's a tank, right? So this is a battle-tested piece of equipment. What makes this thing so awesome, outside of the portability, the Spark comes with a app. A full-featured app from Positive Grid that allows you to connect to any of their smaller portable devices and even some of their larger amps that you can use while gigging, right? This application is a very important tool for musicians to have access to, not only at the higher levels of music, so you can dial in the tone that you need on this interface, but it's also important for guitarists that are starting out because as we move into the future of playing guitar here, there's more and more equipment that requires you to interface with technology to use it to its full capacity. Whether you love it, whether you hate it, that's just what's happening, and you can either get with the times or get out. Before we were describing the ethics of using AI in generating tone, right? We were discussing amp modeling. And it was before that, it was something else, right? Effects, whatever. It is what it is. This piece of equipment gives me access to thousands of tones at the touch of my fingertip that I can download without having any experience having ever used effects in my life. If I'm a new guitarist, that is a powerful tool for me to be able to experiment with new sounds and understand the versatility and utility of effects when it comes to shaping my tone and the sound I'm trying to get out of a guitar. On a side note, I'm just going to go on record as having said this. For anyone that's new to playing guitar, I would highly recommend you spend a vast quantity of your time getting good on the instrument, practicing your scales, practicing your chords, and just understanding the instrument at a higher level before you rely on tone that's being generated by an amp to do the heavy lifting for your tone and what's coming out of your fingers, right? Get good with your instrument before you start getting too far into the weeds with effects. It'll save you so much time in the long run. Having these tools at your disposal on the drop of a dime in a way that's very easy to use because everyone's on the phone. We all know how to use user interfaces now, right? This one is set up in an extremely practical way that's easy to get around. On top of that, this little application, the Positive Grid app, the Spark app, right? It comes with a bunch of built-in backing tracks. Back in the day, I used to get right on them little Boots and Cats beats that would come on my Fender G deck or whatever, because that was my main one. Shout out if you know about the Fender G deck. If you ever had a Fender G deck, you were pushing 30, gang. Let's be honest. You're at least as old as I am, because that is an antiquated piece of equipment. But shout out the Fender G deck, right? That thing had its little built in, it could get into everything you were trying to get into. But yes, once again, this little app has like hundreds of these built in guitar tracks that you can just pick from. And you can play over and experiment with improvisation. On top of that, the app has built-in tuners, just like there's one that's hard baked into the hardware of the device here, right? So you have tuners, you have a metronome, which is one of the most important tools for all guitar players at every level, and you should be using a metronome often if you are playing guitar. But yeah, and even out of all the thousands of sounds that you're able to get out of this thing immediately, you can hard bake 4 of them directly into the hardware, and even if you never touch the app again after that because it's confusing and daunting and you don't want to deal with it, you can just pick your 4 favorite tones, put them on the amp, never think about the app again, and you have an amazing practice speaker that not only works as a Bluetooth, so you can not only get the backing tracks available on this thing, you can get any song anywhere, including ones that you made, and just play over them, and you have all of those tones. You have a tuner. You have a speaker. This thing has its own built-in strap. Yes, I've already tested it many a time. You can walk around with a guitar on this and put it onto the guitar strap. Now you're busking at a reasonable volume that no one is going to ever stitch you up for being at, right? Endless options with this tool because it has all of the best features needed for practicing and immediate utility baked into this extremely small handheld form factor. Yes, I got big hands, but even then, anyone could hold this thing with one hand. It's very simple piece of equipment. Let's get into some examples of it, right? Let's plug this thing in. Right, so you cut the amp on. I got a little, right, get a little tone, a little clean tone. If you want to do a little bit of shredding, you don't just have to have the AC30 clean tone. You can have something that's a little bit more volume boosted. I have a fusion jazz tone that I made that should be available for you to get your hands on. If you just look up fusion jazz tone, it'll come up. But yeah, a little solid mid-gain jazz fusion tone, right? And then after that, you got the little bit of that Hendrix Univox vibe. And then this is simple, straight, again, kind of higher gain, punchy crunch tone, man. All of these tones I was able to make in under like 20 minutes. You go, load them up, bam, you're done. You have all of the things you would need for a practicing scenario all baked into one piece of equipment, and you never have to think about it again. I'm not someone who personally gets on the app every time I'm loading this thing up unless I need to tune because my guitar just went out of tune. And I instantly have access to all of the things that I need without the app, with or without the app, which is such a huge deal for me. I cannot stress that enough. For me, it is the go-to practice amp for all of the reasons that I just mentioned. Which leads us into the next piece of equipment, which is kind of the big brother version of that, mixed with a lot of other things going on, right? So this right here is the Neural DSP Nano Cortex. Shout out Neural DSP, all of the people who went into making this piece of equipment, because this is a serious piece of kit right here. But when I first got my hands on this, I was actually extremely apprehensive of this piece of equipment because I had never used anything like this for a live gigging purpose. And I was just kind of the opinion, right? A good solid tube amp will get the job done. I'm gonna keep it honest. I'm one of those more fixed gear style guitar players too. When I'm playing live, I'll just run the clean and the distortion on like a decent tube amp. It really is that simple. And 90% of the time, if you got the finesse and you got the chops here and the fingers, you can make it sound real pretty and it can do what you need it to do in most situations. Most people hearing you play are not discerning enough listeners to understand the effects change that you have going on. And they definitely don't care about any of that. They just want to see a cool show and hear you do something live that they wouldn't have been otherwise able to see you do. So for me, I'm one of those old school type guitar players, not even on like some back in my day type beat, but just because it really is that simple and you don't need to overcomplicate things. Where yeah, I would just use a tube amp, and if it has a good clean patch and a good distortion patch, crunch patch, we're just thugging it out, bro. We'll get it done that way. This piece of equipment for live use kind of unlocked a lot of different layers because it gave me access to effects on the go that were serious, that made sense, sounded articulate and crisp, and it was all available in a form factor that is very portable. So what I mean by saying that is one of again the cons I didn't even get into with the positive grid piece of equipment is even though you have access to all of those amp simulations and all of that modeling equipment built into one thing that can do it all for you, even as we cycle through the tones that I had built in, right? It's very hard to volume match and pitch match what you got going on with this amp. So even though you might have two patches that are effectively doing something similar, one of them can be coming through just like piercingly loud for a variety of reasons. And it's hard to dial that back and make everything uniform to make it sound professional in a gigging environment. On top of that, some of the tones and tools that it does offer, while they are there and they work and they're effective for what they are, they're also not the most, I don't know what word you, we're just going to say classy sounding version of the effects, right? They're a little bit more of a crude imitation of what is available elsewhere. And it doesn't have that crisp, polished, professional tone. You can expect it to. It's $250, but that's a whole nother point. So we have a headphone jack in so it can run direct out into a set of headphones. You can use it as a practice amp as long as you have some in-ear monitors. It runs direct out so you can run it as a preamp and just have this thing amping your entire rig. You can run it direct into a tube amp to still get a tube amp sound, mic it up, and have it all coming out of a real cabinet. And you can also capture amp simulations by running a mic up direct and doing all of the little voodoo magic that they do whenever you're essentially snatching a tone off of an amp. This is a powerful piece of equipment. These little knobs right here are actually rotary dials. They're not just foot stomps, they're rotary dials. Like each piece of this little rig here is multifaceted in what it is capable of, and there is a lot baked into this thing. So some of the immediate pros when dealing with this, again, portability. This thing is highly portable. The sounds that this thing produces are professional. These are top quality sounds. Anyone in the world would be trying to get their hands on if you know how to dial them in. Once again, we get into the apps, right? So a lot of the guys who get on that Neural DSP app, they're literally dudes who got 50 amp heads and 50 cabinets in the back of their situation, and they just got them all loaded up on little presets, and you can just download them from the Cortex Cloud or whatever the app is called, right? So when you're getting sounds and amp simulations out of this thing, they are the highest quality that there is. It doesn't get any better than this. If you have one of those, what's it called, a Kempler rigs, right? It's the same type of deal. This competes with that. This goes bar for bar with that, and it's not $3,000. I believe this piece of equipment is about $500, which is like the price of a Mexican Strat. That's like the price of a lifetime level instrument that's going to get you anywhere you need to go as a guitar player, all right? $500 is not cheap. That's one thing I hate that musicians do a lot, is they kind of get a number inflation in their head and what like gets categorized as expensive because you've been doing it for so long. Spending $500 on a piece of equipment for any context, it doesn't matter how bad inflation's got. That's a lot of money people don't just have access to. So when you're spending half a grand on something, that's an investment. You are investing into yourself as a musician. But I'm telling you right now, this particular piece of equipment is a worthwhile investment. And some of the reasons that that is, right? Even when I got it and I was super skeptical of it, I was like, well, let me just try using it without any apps. Because that at that point, I'd used a couple of apps, mainly VSTs, right? But I wasn't into the whole using apps with your gigging gear yet. This thing, even if you were to never download that app, is an extremely feature rich guitar pedal. You could treat this thing like a boutique level guitar pedal for 500 bucks. That's like a higher end boutique guitar pedal, right? This does everything that a pedal of that nature would do. It works as the pre, does everything I just said. All of that's available. It just doesn't use the app. Got built-in tuner, all that stuff, right? There's like 50 different functions this thing does without any gear out of the box available to you. If you are someone who is even a, let's say, intermediate level guitar player who's aware of what's going on, but terms like amp modeling or simulation, right, in relation to guitar playing, these things don't have tangible meaning in your head because you haven't experimented with any of that. You can still, once again, plug this thing in, use it as a practice amp, do all the little good jazz, and it sounds good. You don't have to do anything. This does all of the work and heavy lifting for you. I'm a studio musician in a lot of cases, right? Where a lot of time I spend playing guitar, I'm directly plugged into a sound card and trying to get tones out of whatever equipment I'm using. Since this thing has its own processing unit, and between this and the app, it's doing all of the heavy lifting and forging your tone, you are offloading an immense burden from your computer by using this piece of equipment, as opposed to, let's say, any of the neural DSP VSTs and software that they have, right? Any of their plugins and presets. By having that, you're able to get a lot more out of even cheaper computer equipment. So instead of having to go have a decent computer to do all this stuff with, you can get away skimp with having a cheaper laptop or anything at your disposal. And this thing, as long as you have a sound card to get the sound into the computer with, is going to circumvent a lot of processing power. That's a huge deal. That does come with some cons, right? Because you have to play it all live. If you're going to do something, you either have to strip it of all the effects and put the effects in post, which works, or you have to do it all in that take and tailor that take to your needs. If it has reverb, the reverb cuts out at weird spots, doing all that stuff. Yeah, it's going to sound a little goofy and unprofessional. So you got to work around that. But if you're at that level with home audio and audio engineering, you're able to figure that out. You can do the due diligence and get that done. So, on top of it having a lot of the same capabilities that we talked about with the positive grid, right? This thing is capable of doing it at a professional level with like 30 baked in sounds that you can have all on the flip of a dime just from this rotary dial situation and the patches that you have set up through these little stomps. And again, we have tuner on the go, mobile amp on the go, all of the little pieces of equipment that you would need that you would have to then use for a car, right? So I need the PA, I need the amp, I need the whatever. It's all one thing. You just take this to the bar, take this to the gig, take this to the church, right? Wherever you're playing at, you have access to it. So, yes, I think that's a very useful piece of equipment. And it's pretty much the big brother version of that positive grid that we were looking at with a whole lot of extra bells and whistles. Now, let's get into the cons of that, right? So, with those extra bells and whistles comes a much steeper learning curve. For reasons I can't even fully get into in this video because it would just make it take too long. That piece of equipment requires a comprehensive level of understanding of, once again, home audio and audio engineering concepts to really make full use out of, because you're getting a model of an amp at a specific state of that amp. That means nothing to people who don't play guitar or model amps, but you're not just getting a Marshall half stack when you model a Marshall half stack. You're getting a Marshall half stack at the EQ settings and parameters it was set to when that amp and speaker were captured together. That does matter, and it affects the ability you have to do certain things. Regardless of any of that, it still sounds good, and you're getting 98% of a Marshall half stack at those parameters on this thing that you can then EQ, put your own effects on, and make it sound, again, professional, crispy. One other thing, the amount of effects that this thing has is very limited. So on something like a positive grid, a spark or whatever, you can just keep loading it up with effects until the thing crashes and takes a dump, right? Even on bias, you can do that. Just keep hammering in effects until your CPU starts bugging. With this piece of equipment, you have access to 2 pre and 3 post. Certain ones, even let's say you would want to use a compressor in conjunction with another compressor, right? To like get a specific sound out of your tone. You are not doing any of that. You have one compressor. It's a very good compressor that sounds top of the line, industry standard, but you can use one. You can use one overdrive, right? You can use one delay, one, all those things, right? So, not saying there's too many use cases where, if we're being honest with ourselves, you would need to do any of that stuff. But in those rare cases where you're trying to experiment, it does hinder that creative potential and it bottlenecks you. 99% of you are not at the level yet where that matters. And even if you are, you have access to other gear just like I do to keep that experimentation and free flowing thought on the tracks. You don't need that to do it, and there's other ways to get it. And for that price point, right? I don't know anything about the quad cortex or any of the bigger pieces or versions of this equipment. I would assume a lot of those remove that issue due to having more processing power and just more features on board. So yes, for $500, you are getting a professional piece of equipment that I personally, right, when I'm playing, because I got minimum a practice and 2 shows a week. I play with the church, and if I'm not over there, I'm doing a bunch of other stuff, and this thing gets all of that done. All of that is very much so possible, and it makes sense for $500 to go to this before you would go to, let's say, a more scaled up version of that positive grid. Because I actually experimented with one of their bigger versions of this amp head. Long story short, it kind of took a dump on me right in the middle of a set. And I had to just make do with what was available to me in the immediate because it wouldn't even connect to the amp because it started really getting on the fritz and not working correctly. It wasn't nearly as optimized and as put together as this little piece of equipment here. There was still some kinks and issues it was dealing with. That might be just the case for those older versions of those bigger amps, but yeah, this, none of that. Works every time. You press the button, that button's going to do exactly what you think it's going to do every time. It's bulletproof. And just like the positive grid, if you never use another application, boot it up again, you chuck your phone out the window, this is still an extremely powerful boutique pedal that's going to do everything you need it to do on board. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of why a lot of you would be looking at this video, because for a lot of people the gear is cool, but the guitars are why we do it, right? So starting off, we have this bad mama jamma right here. Go ahead and take a gander. Because for a lot of you who started playing guitar when I did, this thing is a throwback piece of equipment. We have the LTD F50. This particular guitar right here, I don't actually play very much on. This is actually a teaching tool for me. So whenever you have a student or someone who doesn't have their own gear, or let's say their gear is kind of not the greatest and you don't want to be rude or, make them feel as though they're not prepared, you just hand them this thing right here. This is a solid, bulletproof beginner level instrument. I would even go as far as saying this is a lot more beginner plus, even ranging on intermediate depending on your use cases. We were at the music store, me and my dad, we were playing guitar. I plugged this thing in and I was like, I forgot that in the early 2000s, LTD and ESP at large were making some of the best entry level guitars in the world. I never personally played this when I was coming up as a guitar player because this body shape is just aggressive. This is an aggressive looking Stratocaster style double cut body. It has all of that Avenged Sevenfold, Godsmack, Disturbed, early 2000s, like alt metal, energy in it. But if you look past that, this is a real solid, hardtail, double humbucking guitar that is going to just absolutely bite. This thing barks. It's a solid little piece of equipment, and right now you could get these things for every bit of $250 or less. And if you manage to get your hands on one that hasn't been absolutely manhandled and mangled by some 15-year-old, right? They're really solid instruments that have actually stood the test of time quite well. And I think for someone who's looking for, again, a beginner level instrument or something to start your guitar playing journey on, this is the model. This is the archetype of what you want. Having something that's hardtail is going to be an extreme benefit. I know you want to have your Floyd Rose. I know you want to have your Trem. Just learning how to play and having a solid platform that you can anchor your arm on, learn how to strum, get that right hand theory going. That's going to be an immensely powerful tool for you to have because it's going to remain solid. It's not going to have all the finickiness. If you want to start drop tuning, tell me a kid playing this in the 2000s is not drop tuning the guitar. Let's just keep it a bean, right? Having something like this at your disposal, it's just an invaluable piece of equipment. It's got 24 frets for all the little shredders in the making, right? And yeah, the neck plays fast. It's got the scarf joint, so it's actually more durable. I Unpopular opinion, I think scarf joint guitars are a lot of times better than just one piece necks, but we're not here to discuss all the details, right? Got solid medium jumbo size frets on here. Like, this is a mean guitar, and this is one of the ones that, yes, you might overlook as a beginner level player because it doesn't look the coolest to you or it's not speaking to you on that level. And a guitar does. It needs to speak to you and make you feel inspired to play it. Having a tool like this, even again for someone who's a more advanced, expert level guitar player, then this becomes a teaching tool. Then you know that your student isn't being encumbered by the guitar that they're playing because it literally can't hold tune or it's not set up right. The action's unplayable, right? Because that's a huge problem a lot of the times for students. They're playing on guitars that costed $50, $100, $150 from these random, companies because it's what they could get their hands on. And bless them, they're trying to learn, right? They're sticking to it. But a lot of times they don't even know it. And the gear that they are trying to use while playing guitar is directly hindering their ability to play guitar. They're like Rock Lee with the weights on. You don't even know what you're capable of because you're constantly being held back by the gear you're using. With a solid access to all of the frets, a decent set of pickups, they're very high output, like again, 2000s metal pickups. These aren't the most diverse pickups. Two humbuckers. This thing's going to be solid. It's not going to give you any issues. And it's a performance instrument for that price point. And I think this is, again, the archetype. If you are looking for an instrument at that $200 to $250 price point, you want to go out and find something like this. Find the Epiphone equivalent. Find the Stratocaster equivalent. Find the whatever insert company here equivalent, but this is what you're shooting for. Something that's on this quality of build standard that's going to allow you to play and not going to force you to try and play around it. This particular instrument, since it's not one of the ones that I use regularly, it's not named and it doesn't have a backstory. But yes, this is a great instrument. Go ahead and comment if you think it should have a name. I only name instruments that I play and that I've put my love and energy into. All right, this is still a good instrument, and I highly recommend it. Next up, we have the classic pick. This is just a classic. I don't really need to explain myself here, do I? This is a Fender Stratocaster. This particular one is a USA made 1990s 50th anniversary Fender Stratocaster. So this is actually a vintage instrument, and it's USA made during the, golden years of Fender before they started clowning themselves with lawsuits. This particular one has a Seymour Duncan humbucker in the bridge, and I believe these are also Seymour Duncan, what's it called, single coils. But yeah, it's just a looker. This instrument looks good, it plays good, it stood the test of time, it has a trem system. This is every bit of a Fender Stratocaster with a maple neck, and it plays just like one. Having a good Strat style guitar in your arsenal is a must. The one thing I would change on this instrument, if I could, funny enough, is this humbucker. Because when I was a kid, I used to love Iron Maiden and all those bands, right? And I'd be like, dude, they got a Fender, but it's got a humbucker in the bridge. That's like metal, man. Like, so at that time in my life, I thought this was the coolest thing. But I actually really like the sound of a single coil in the bridge. It has a very particular bite that's articulate. And when you pair that with the middle pickup here, the middle single coil, I think it has a very nice mid gain prog guitar tone that is hard to replicate, especially with a humbucker. But this guitar, it speaks for itself. If you've played a Fender Stratocaster, having one in your arsenal, whether it's a Squire, an Ensenada Mexico, a Made in Mexico, whatever level of build quality it is, having a Fender Stratocaster at your disposal is going to be a huge part of forging tone if you're already well into your guitar playing journey, right? This neck pickup is the money maker. Everyone that plays a Fender Stratocaster, they're playing it for this neck pickup. They aren't using it for the bridge. This right here has sold millions of records, all right? It's a beautiful instrument, and this one particularly is named I no Ame, and that's a Japanese for the rain of love. And that's because this particular instrument was given to me at a time of an outpouring of love for what it is that I do as a musician. And when you play this thing, the notes just kind of pour out in a very particular way that's it's hard to describe, right? Right? It's just got that thing, right? It's just mm. It's got the Fender sound. And if you're looking for that sound, right, you're going for that particular phrasing of tone, there truly is not a better tool than just going out and getting a Stratocaster. Now, I know this is the worst case example for the point I would like to illustrate next, but again, I think most of the Stratocasters in the world that are worth owning are not USA made Fenders. Don't shoot the messenger, all right? I know there's a million Fender stands out there who probably wouldn't agree with what I just said for various reasons, whether it's trying to snub your nose up at some. I know this is literally a 50th anniversary USA made. Like, this is not the one to illustrate that point with. This is every bit of the Fender you buy because it holds its value. But outside of that point, right? Guitars, especially when you're looking for something like this that has so many types of it available on the market at so many different price range, you need to remove this from your interpretation of the instrument you're playing. Most of the Fender Stratocasters and Fender products that are a Stratocaster that have mojo, right? That have the thing, that indescribable thing when you pick it up, that it was made by someone who has something to prove, and the people who played it after it was bought and it made its way to you also put time and love into it. That just gives it this like ethereal quality that you cannot put your hands on, right? Mojo. That's the word guitarists use, but it's a mixture of all of those things coming together. Most Fenders that have a mojo are straight up Squires. I'm not even joking. It's the most bizarre thing ever. 90% of the Fenders in the world that have a mojo don't even cost $300. And what happens to every single one of these guitars is a beginner who doesn't realize what they have and just wants to have the thing that's next up in the chain of virtue signaling that you're a legit guitar player, right? Because having the one with the legit name on it makes you feel legit. They go out and sell these beautiful Stratocasters that are genuinely worth every bit of however much they paid for them, and then some dude like me who's like got the the bloodhound, like the nose where it just like goes into the music store, just picks it up like, oh, that's a good one, right? They go and it ends up in their collection of 50 other guitars. That's how it happens every time for those guitars. It is important when you are playing a guitar that you assess that guitar on a case by case basis, because not every guitar that has the official company logo on it has mojo, or is even a good guitar outside of the mojo, right? Outside of the unexplainable quality of the instrument. Sometimes they're just not put together well. Like they were made on a Friday and it's just actually a bunk instrument, and you're going to fight that thing tooth and nail with a lot of money invested trying to get it to sound how you want it to sound, and it's never going to sound right. I've seen this happen countless times. Homie buys his first Fender, right? His first Gibson, and he's like, dude, it's a Fender. And then he keeps pulling up to practice with the guitar he already had because he can't get the thing to stay in tune. Don't get finessed. Don't get played by the name. Yes, this one is a particularly beautiful and more rare and a little bit more sought after instrument. I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I'm able to play something like this. You don't have to go have something like this to get the tone that this has. Be happy with where you're at and use it to its fullest. As you get better at playing guitar, more guitars that need to get played that are really great instruments are going to start finding you. They'll start making their presence known to you. And you'll know when you're playing them because you'll be at a level where you can sense the aura, right? Sense the mojo that's coming off of the instrument. You'll get there. Be patient and keep practicing. Keep practicing your scales. Keep doing what got you to the dance. I have a Squire that a friend gave to me a long time ago that has mojo. It's one of these guitars we're speaking of, but it's in a state of disrepair right now. I'm actually thinking about just stripping the pick guard and putting it in here. I guarantee you 90% of the people that hear you play it would never know the difference. And to me, honestly, that pickups, I don't know if it's just because they're super old and I don't know what happened, but they got a tone, man. That guitar has mojo. But yep, this right here, the Reign of Love. It's marked, it's been named. It was made by a named luthier, right? This is a quality prestige level instrument, and this is an heirloom quality instrument. Pass this down to my kids, it'll still be an amazing instrument. That thing is not in tune. Played many Gibsons, some of them $8,000, some of them $80, right? This one decimates all of them by such a significant margin. I'm not even joking. This is the best Gibson I have ever played, bro. I'm gonna go on. I'll just say it on record. This is the best Gibson I've ever personally seen, played, or seen in person. This is an extremely interesting instrument too. If we take a look at the back of this instrument, it has locking tuners, right? And when I went into the music store and I picked this thing up, I instantly started like noticing all these little details, and I realized that this instrument was exactly what we were talking about before. It got made on a Monday, right? It just got made on the right day of the week. And whoever owned this thing before put some serious miles on it and adjusted it to be at the exact likeness for what they needed. And what came as a result is an extremely nice instrument that I can't put into words. This guitar is the mojo instrument of my fleet. It has the most mojo of any guitar I've ever owned. It just talks in a way that doesn't make any sense for it to be talking, right? The locking tuners were a dead giveaway when I picked the thing up at the store that someone had put some time into it, right? And this was a gigging man's instrument. Whoever used this played many a show with this instrument. They didn't just take it, sit at home with it, and look at it. On top of that, the neck either has been sanded down or played to such a point that the lacquer's gone. The lacquer is just straight up gone. This is a natural wood finish Gibson. Not super common with all of the gloss coats and binding that they have on many higher level build quality Gibsons, right? But this guitar is a particularly nice instrument. It's got the Seymour Duncans in here, which again, someone put these in here. I don't even know how many things have been done to this guitar. But when I picked it up, I instantly assessed it as an amazing instrument. It barks, it sings, it's a Gibson, it's a Les Paul. If you like Les Pauls, there is no better Les Paul. I would put this against any custom shop you got sitting in your garage or wherever you keep it, right? Like, this goes tit for tat with the best Gibsons of all time in terms of build quality. And this illustrates the point that we were talking about earlier. This is of a lower build quality. Whoever owned it wanted to put this on here so it didn't say studio, might have gave them a little complex. They didn't like that it says studio. I personally think it's even better that this thing is a studio because it illustrates that point of you don't always need the most high end thing to have the most high end playing experience, right? Yes, this is still a Gibson. You're not just going to go get a Gibson for $300. They cost a lot of money. But this particular Gibson is so unassuming when you look at it in the lineage of Gibsons, you would think nothing of it. That's probably why it was sitting in the music store when I found it and wasn't immediately bought because those things never stay for a long time. It doesn't have binding. It's got regular inlays. It's got a natural finish, right? Doesn't have some crazy flame quilted whatever top. No pickup covers, no nothing. This is a straight to business instrument, and it does just that. It gives you the business, right? This guitar's name is the Golden Wind. If you know, you know. But it really speaks to the instrument itself, man. Like got that mahogany body sustain that just cannot be put into words, man. It's a amazing instrument, and the Golden Wind is every bit of, just like I said with that other one, a heirloom instrument. The sort of instrument this doesn't just come across that many times in a lifetime. So when you get one, you keep your hands on it and you appreciate what you have. Don't just get rid of it because you have to, right? But yes, this right here is the Gibson Les Paul Golden Wind. This one speaks for itself. This is the hybridizing point between the two guitars that I just showed you, done at the highest level of build quality that is available on the market. This is a PRS McCarty 594. Just a solid piece of kit. It's not the most flashy instrument ever made, and it's definitely not the first one many people would think of when they think of an instrument that is a go-to. But for me, when it comes to gigging and it comes to playing on a week in, week out basis, especially in church or anywhere else, right? This is the guitar for the job. It's also a very interesting instrument because it's a workhorse instrument, but it has mojo. Now, this is an interesting topic to get into that I also wanted to talk about, right? Not every instrument that you have that's of a higher build quality, that's extremely stable, is going to survive in any conditions you put it in, and it's just going to be in tune and sound correct and do what you need it to do, right? Not every instrument that does that is going to be a guitar that has mojo. Mojo is something that is an undescribable quality that some guitars possess and some don't. This guitar is a workhorse and it has mojo. having something like that is priceless because it gives you the ability to be inspired and to allow the notes to pour out from in you while also knowing that the thing isn't just going to start fighting back on a moment's notice. Many guitars that have mojo, right, that have that undescribable quality, part of that undescribable is like they will fight you. They will fight you tooth and nail to get that tone out of them. But once you do, it just gives you this joy and ecstasy that's hard to put into words. But this guitar does none of that. It works every time. The reason I use it for live purposes is because both of the pickups are figured in such a way where the volume matches up almost perfectly with all of my patches and presets that I use live, and it sounds professional. I get the smooth, creamy leads out of the neck pickup, and I get just enough bite and just enough of that higher gain out of the back pickup to give me the bark that I need when I'm playing in a professional environment on a weekly basis. This guitar right here is an amazing instrument, right? So with the Fender that we had before, it's very good at giving you a very specific type of punch, a very specific type of cut, and a very distinct tone that can only be found on a Fender Stratocaster. The Gibson is good at giving you a specific bite, a specific sustain that can only be found with a Gibson Les Paul. The Paul Reed Smith double cut guitar with two humbuckers is the true synthesis point of all of those things. It is where yin meets yang and where peace is achieved, balance is achieved, which is where this instrument got its name through many a night playing it. This guitar right here is named the Wado Ichimonji. If you know, you know. Shout out all my One Piece fans out there. But it was the perfect name for this particular instrument and this particular blade in the arsenal because it is truly a point of balance. And when you have something like this at your disposal, it's truly priceless to put it into words. And that's exactly what this is. It is the line that cuts through the harmony, the melody, the rhythm, and the percussion when you're playing live. It just works, it does its job, and you know exactly what you're getting when you get an instrument of this quality, of this build standard, and it just works, man. This is a great instrument. Another reason it was given the name Wado Ichimonji, if you can see the what's it called? It might have came into focus there for a second, but yeah, it's got 21 in the serial number. And the Wado Ichimonji is one of the 21 great swords of One Piece, which is, again, nerd, whatever, but yes, the Wado Ichimonji. This is a great instrument. And now we move on to the true heavy hitter of my entire guitar collection. This is the sword to decimate all others. The blade reforged. The instrument, if I want anyone when I die to remember me by, this is the instrument right here. My Gretsch Semi Hollow. This guitar's name is Hinoishi. And that's exactly what this guitar is for me, right? It's the will of fire personified. That's what that name means. It's the will of fire. As it is passed down to all ninja of the Leaf Village. And yeah, man, this is just a very important instrument for me because not only does it meet all of the other previous discussed criteria, but it also holds a special. But yes, this guitar, it holds a very special place in my heart and in my journey as a musician. And that is exactly what it is. Yeah, so the story behind this guitar is this was given to me by my father as the tool to use when I started returning back to playing guitar after a very large portion of the latter years of my adult life where I had almost completely stopped playing guitar on a daily basis. Yes, I was playing just out of utility as a audio engineer and producer, but I had put the guitar playing phase of my life aside because my left wrist is actually kind of slightly deformed. You can't see it super well on camera, but I got this giant bone or whatever it is sticking out from that side of my wrist that doesn't quite happen on my right wrist. And it's literally from being in this position for all of the formative years of my life, playing guitar as much as I did. And yeah, at the time I was playing a lot of extended range instruments and a lot of like, again, the race car, I call them the race cars of the guitar world because that's what they are, right? These precision custom built instruments for peak tone. And I was totaling myself out with the amount of time I was spending trying to develop my skill set and kind of spinning a hamster wheel because I was in this echo chamber of guitar development and musical development at large, right? I had reached this point of stagnation because I had ended up on an island as a musician for various reasons, and there's no outside collaboration, no muse, no observation of the world. I was at an impasse where my body was literally failing me. I was no longer able to play guitar for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day like I was at that time in my life. And I knew that the times like that were passing me. And I was having trouble reconciling it in my brain because I had spent my entire life developing my skill set and trying to be, a musician and do the thing and be one of those guys on the guitar. People are like, oh man, when they think of a guitar, right? A lot of people would think of you, right? You want to be one of those guys. And, I worked really hard to get to a level of playing guitar that is respectable and worthy of proper acknowledgement and not just putting aside. And I wasn't doing that. I was extremely hard on myself. And yeah, it created a lot of dissonance in my heart that was making it where my body was failing me, my mind was failing me, and as a result, my spirit as a musician was failing me. That's when I made the Transcending Solomon tape that I recently re released. And I kind of made that as my send off to the progressive guitar and just more guitar focused era of my music and music production as an instrument, as a musician and player of instruments particularly. And a couple years after that, I was working on a dirt bike, right? And I almost lost my right arm completely. Yeah, my arm completely snapped back the wrong way. Like it goes this way, thing was over there in the weeds somewhere, right? It just looked like a bad situation. And I pretty much destroyed all of everything in the joint right here, keeping my arm together. And I had to go under the knife for the first time in my life. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to get my arm back. Now, this created a very interesting moment in my life because for the first time since I had started playing guitar, being made aware of, even in my subconscious, that you do not have an unlimited amount of time in this life to do the things you love. And I guess that concept may have dawned on me a little bit to that point, but looking at my arm as it was in a state of disrepair and it didn't even work, right? I couldn't move my fingers right. Everything was just in pain. And yeah, being in that situation really put in perspective, you do not have forever to do this. And there will come a day when you play your last note, whatever that day is. For some, it'll be sooner than others. And for others, they got many more to play. But being in that situation really kind of just put me on an emotional back foot in a way that I had never been in. Because it didn't happen because I was doing something stupid or got into a bad. I was literally working and I almost lost my arm completely. Even to this day, if I'm being completely honest, my arm doesn't work completely right. And while it is an arm and it functions like an arm, it's about 25% of what it used to be. Coming to those realizations and just understanding where I was at, it also, in a weird way, reinvigorated me and made me acutely aware of the fact that I had been given a skill, I'd been given a blessing, and I needed to use it to its fullest potential. And I wasn't doing that. So at that time in my life, when my arm had just started working again, and I had already offloaded all my other instruments that weren't, again, like sentimental heirloom pieces or something of that nature, right? I got this guitar. It was given to me by my father along with a little Black Star tube amp, and that's where my journey as a church musician started again, right? So playing in the church on the worship team and truly using my skills for their intended purposes and doing it often for the sake of doing it because it's something I've been given the ability to do and something that I invested a large portion of my life into, right? So another problem that I was having as a guitarist was that everything in my life pertained to guitar and playing music. One thing that happens as a result of that is that echo chamber effect we were talking about, right? If alls you are is a guitarist and alls you are is a guitar playing musician, all of the music you make will come from the perspective and the mental state of a guitarist, right? When that's all you see yourself as, even though there's a million other things that make you a person, if all you see is a guitarist or whatever musician, insert your instrument here, when you look in the mirror, it affects your ability to create and to truly be an artist in full voice. And spending that time away from playing the guitar all the time not only brought me back stronger, but it made me a little bit wiser, right? Because now when I use my arm, I have to think about everything that I'm doing with my arm when I'm playing a guitar. I'm not just doing it willy nilly, right? I'm not just playing the notes. I'm thinking about why I'm playing the notes and why they need to be where they are. It's a powerful tool that is used by a man, not a child, right? Thinking before you do something, thinking before you take action. And by being given this wisdom and by being given that forethought, right? The ability to foresee things and plan accordingly, it made me a stronger musician, even though it took away a layer of my technical ability that I can never get back. I can't fully get it back. It just doesn't exist anymore, but it gave me other abilities, right? I started to hone in my right hand theory. Now, a lot of the things I play when I'm writing music are much more chord voiced and able to speak more because I'm doing more with this hand by using not just my picking finger, but every other finger that I have. It gives me more options as a guitar player. I've gotten much stronger as a legato guitar player as my staccato has been taken away from me, right? So now my left hand has become much more dexterous and sharp and articulate as a result of the circumstance I find myself in, right? Being broken and reforged as a person changed me. Having my relationship with the guitar broken and reforged changed my relationship with the guitar. It made me a much more sound musician and it made many of my skill sets and many of the things I do much more complete. At the earliest stages of my musical development, I heavily relied on natural musical aptitude to carry me in a lot of situations where other people had to really work very hard to do what it was I was doing and taking for granted. But when it comes to things like life, you get humble. You gonna get served that slice of that humble peasy and you gonna eat it or you ain't. I chose to take a bite and it was the best decision I ever made, man, because it brought me back to playing guitar. It gave me guitar back as something in my life that was at the forefront of what it is I was doing without allowing it to consume me and be the only thing that made me who I am. There's a lot of other parts that make up me, Will as a person, right? Mugen as a person. And by taking the time away from the instrument to understand who I was, understand not only why I do what I do, but where it comes from in my spirit and in my heart, it made me a stronger musician and a better guitar player for it. That is why this is the blade reforged, right? This is Aragon's sword. This is the this is the burning tool used to fight the devil, right? Like this is the instrument. This is the piece of equipment. And for me, it's a first owned instrument. Every bit of mojo it has is came from me. The people out in Indonesia making these Gretches right now have something to prove, right? They're trying to show that from that part of the world, great instruments can be made, even if they're not of some higher build order from named luthiers in these custom shops, from these companies that have all of the resources at their disposal. Yes, Gretsch is a big subsidiary of Fender, but these particular guitars are being made by people that have something to prove and put all of their love into them. And that's why a lot of these mid 2020s Gretches, when you go pick them up at the store, they talk. They talk in a very specific way right out the box that's hard to put into words. And I found a particularly good one. This was the one that popped off of the shelf when I went to the store, and when I picked it up, it struck true. First note. And it's hard to put that into words. And this guitar right here, this $450 Gretsch means more to me than any other instrument that I own because of the place that it takes in my heart, the amount of time that I've put into playing it, and the story that comes along with it for me as a person. This guitar is me as a person. I'm an old man in guitar playing years. I've been doing this for 2 decades. Yes, this is an old man. It's a granddaddy unk instrument. Not all the kids, right? When you tell them, oh, you should go get a Gretsch, they're gonna roll their eyes at you, right? Because they're trying to get that shredder, the Floyd Rose, the metal guitar. That's all great. This is the gold wing, right? This is the all roads lead you to this. You're gonna end up here someday. You might not think so yet, but you're gonna put on them strap on or laceless unk shoes, and you gonna figure it out one of these times. This was calling you, man. And for me, yeah, this is the tool to get the job done. Cause that's another thing I was thinking about a lot too, right? When you're learning and you're developing your toolkit as a musician, that's one thing. But achieving mastery of an instrument and being at a level where you would be considered a master, not because you know it all, but you have mastered your instrument, right? Or whatever it is you're doing in this life. Being a master, the difference between why you're doing what you're doing, when I practice, I'm not practicing anymore to just develop my skill set. While I am using the time that I have to practice to do that as well, I'm also using that time to prepare my body and prepare myself to be able to do this as long as I can for the rest of my life. Right? When you see the guys like Guthrie Govan, the Alan Holdsworths of the world, you see those types of characters who carry an immense technical ability into the advanced ages of their life. There's so many layers to why that is inspirational and why that is noteworthy outside of even what they're doing with the instrument. Being able to do this for a long time is its own skill, is its own thing that you have to master. That's why when people make these videos on YouTube saying, hey, you know, spending 8 hours a day practicing, while everyone's going to have that phase of their journey as a musician, right? You're just going to have those nights where you're putting a lot of time in. For every moment of that, there's going to need to be another section of your life where you need to know how to get the most out of 30 minutes of practice, out of an hour of practice, and having the proper tools to know how to practice and do it for the respective level that you are at as a musician or in anything that you're doing in this life. That's what keeps you in the game. Being able to stay in the game past a certain point is its own kudos, is its own props, man. Like, Yes, I'm still a young man in the respective prime of my life, but I've already put a lot of wear on my body doing this. And every second that I get to do it after this is a blessing, right? It's a blessing from God. So I use this skill in service to Him and the church, right? I got the skill from God. I use it at the church as a result of having a relationship with Him. Everything I get to do outside of that, inspire, teach musicians, and be a part of the guitar playing community at large, it's all a blessing. And every second I get to do it matters to me. So this guitar means so many things, so many words, so many different facets of who I am as a person are all wrapped up in this thing. Yes, it's a black, semi hollow Gretsch guitar, right? Many black dude wearing a suit have played this before me, and I won't be the last, right? But this particular instrument means everything to me as far as being a guitarist is concerned, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. If there's only one guitar I could take into battle with me forever, this is the guitar, man. And it's a special instrument. There's many lessons I learned from having this as a piece of my walk as a guitar player and in my life journey as a man. No, it's not the most expensive piece of equipment. No, it's not the most flashy instrument either, but it's the right tool for me and it's the one that speaks to who I am as a person. So having that guitar, you'll know when you have it on your journey as a guitar player. This one is mine. But yep, after 20 years of playing the guitar, just about right around there at this point, these are the pieces of equipment that I use. These are the things on a daily basis that I go to, that I have at my disposal to not only forge tones in a studio capacity and audio engineering capacity, but also to get the tones that I need live and to do the things that I need to do live on a weekly basis. Each one of these tools has their place. Each one of them is very important. Some of them may be right for you and some of them might not be. But after a very long time of spending every day with these instruments, these are some of my findings. And I hope that they can help you on your musical journey as you determine what gear you need and what works for you. It has been your boy, Mugen.